Good morning. John Musher still here at our hidden hideaway and headquarters for the Ferndale Alliance Church. And for the last few days, we have been hovering over Matthew chapter 5, verse 10 that says, "Blessed are those that are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Sometimes we've landed right on the verse, and sometimes we're sort of taking a larger view of what the implications of that might mean. We have especially been concerned of late about the church's relationship with government during this pandemic. And this morning, I'm going to exercise boldly 3 of my First Amendment rights and actually then reference a 4th right. I'm going to exercise the freedom that I have to express my faith and my religion, the freedom I have to speak my mind, my point of view, my opinion, the freedom guaranteed me in the First Amendment to petition my government for the redress of grievances or for the remedy of grievances. I'm doing that this morning, and then we are going to petition our government about a remedy concerning a 4th right found in the First Amendment, the right to assemble peacefully. 2 things I want to do this morning. I want to talk about my constitutional concerns about what appears to many of us to be the discriminatory nature of the current 4-phase plan by our state, by our governor to reopen the state. I'll come back to that in a moment. And then I also want to talk about this extremely well-used word, the word essential. Essential businesses, essential activities. And the word essential has certainly taken on larger than life meaning to a lot of people. I would like to close the second half of this message to talk about the essential nature of the gathered community of faith, whether it's a synagogue or a temple or an assembly or a church, how essential that is to a community, to the health and well-being of a community. I also want to say this: we support, and our churches always practice sound health and safety policies. Before the churches were closed down, we were practicing them, and we are committed, as I believe all churches are, to best practices when it comes to social distancing and washings and things like that. No argument here. I am specifically concerned about what appears to me and to many people to be the discriminatory set of policies that have been publicized by the state. You can look these up, the 4-phase rollout plan in the Washington state. First of all, I note this contradiction and this point of discrimination. At phase 2, restaurants are allowed to open up at 50% capacity. So I checked with a local popular restaurant that we have, one of my favorites. They hold 320 people. If I understand the law correctly, 160 people can gather for a meal, spend 90 minutes, a couple hours. Tables up to 5 people. That's people sitting pretty closely together. Churches, during phase 2, 5 people. A church of 5 people can meet during phase 2. I don't understand why restaurants can go at 50% capacity. You could have some large restaurants. Think of some of the larger restaurants in our area that can hold 300 and 400 people. Half of them can gather, but only 5 people of faith can gather. How is that not a discriminatory? I don't think intentionally. By the way, I don't think anybody's trying to hassle religion, but it is a discriminatory practice to do that. Let's look at phase 3. In phase 3, restaurants are now allowed to have up to 75% capacity and tables of up to 10 people. But more so, theaters are allowed to open at 50% capacity. Museums and libraries are allowed to open. Churches in phase 3, 50 and under. That might be fine for some churches. In our case, we could run a couple services and get everybody in and out. But what about churches that are larger than 50 people? What are they going to do? It seems to me to be discriminatory towards large churches, even medium-sized churches, but not restaurants, not theaters. And by the way, here's the irony of it. There are a lot of churches, I bet maybe hundreds, if not more, that are meeting in theaters. Theaters are fantastic places for churches to meet. So at 3 in the afternoon, you could have a movie that's packed at 50% capacity, could be hundreds of people, but the church has to be limited to 50 people. And so I'm asking, according to the First Amendment, I'm asking the governor to redress that, to remedy that, to make it not discriminatory. We're not asking for special treatment. We are asking for equal and non-discriminatory treatment. I also want to talk about what we believe is the essential nature of the gathered church. If you're not a person that goes to church, cool. That's the amazing thing about this country. There are places around the world that you by law have to attend religious services, or if you don't, you are ostracized, you're discriminated against, you're looked down upon. In our country, we have freedom of religion to exercise it, to gather together for worship and prayer and teaching and such. We also have the freedom not to. You might be I'd rather sit by the beach and look at the ocean kind of person on a Sunday. Fantastic. I love this about our country. I am not going to force or make you do anything you don't want to do. But there are people that find the gathering of the church, synagogue, temple. I may just use the word church generically, but you know what I mean. Religious people to gather together as a real essential part of their lives. To them, it is more essential than libraries and museums that are allowed to open under the governor's plan. So real quickly here, 10 reasons why people of faith feel that churches need to gather in the proximity of one location. First of all, corporate worship and prayer. This is why people go to church, is they want to be with other people to experience in the same proximity, the same room, worship and prayer and fellowship and teaching and the like. And I'm going to give you an example. This is why people who aren't going to church, although some people that go to church do the same thing, like to go to clubs or concerts or venues, rather than just sit at home and watch a concert on the television set. I got to go to a live concert to hear Elton John a couple years ago. That was a big, meaningful deal. As much as I'd heard Elton John all the time, regularly, on the radio, on a CD, in my iPod, on TV, there was an experience there of being not just with him, but with a large group of people around me enjoying the same thing. And so people of faith need and they find it essential to get together, to worship and share God together in a shared experience in the same room. Number 2, church for many people is family. I've been a pastor for 32 years, and often people will say to me in their situation, and this is a common situation, my church family is closer to me than my biological family. Now, it breaks my heart to hear that. Right now, as I share this message, I am with my entire family. We are gathered together in a large home. My whole family, all 7 kids, 3 extra husbands in there, and 2 grandchildren, and 1 in the oven. We are all gathered in one place. And that is so thrilling for us. It is so meaningful to us. But when I learn of people that don't have that, it breaks my heart, and they tell me they find something like that, and sometimes more so in the church community. The scriptures tell us, and I'm reading from Romans 12:5, that though we are many, we are one body, one family in Christ, and members of one another. And if that's not a meaningful thing for you, cool. But I want you to trust me that it's essential for a large number of people to have those immediate gatherings of the church family together. Number 3, we gather as a community to receive wisdom and direction and instruction that we can't get over the internet. Here's why. In our tradition, and it's similar to most, it's not just the guy up front, the preacher. I guess that's what I am, the preacher, the pastor, the minister, the head guy that's giving instruction. The Bible teaches us that everybody has a word of wisdom. This is from 1 Corinthians 14:12 26. Everybody comes to the community with a message, a word, an insight, a revelation, a word of encouragement. It tells us we come with those things ready-made when we gather together. We then go to each other. It may be before church, maybe after church, it may be during the service, and we share with one another words that we think that are helpful, encouraging, and beneficial to people. That doesn't happen. It can't happen the same way in a Zoom room. It happens when you're face to face with people. Number 4, we are people of faith and we believe in the real resurrected Jesus Christ. He is real to us, but he's uniquely real to us in the gathering of saints. There's a verse, it's in Matthew chapter 18, verse 20, that when 2 or 3 are gathered, he's in our midst. Now, the context of that verse is churches living and enforcing a standard of living, of not sinning, and of being righteous and good. That's the context there. Is Christ is involved with the process of redemption and bringing people back who have maybe strayed. But there's a broader principle, I think, expressed here. There is something unique when God's people gather together, not just 2 or 3, but more. He is there present when the purpose of that meeting is to honor him and love him. Number 5, the church uniquely ministers to the disenfranchised, the afflicted, and those that are alone. That's what we're there for. We are there by charter to reach out to people in a very personal way. And I know that a lot of government agencies try to do that, and sometimes they do it well, sometimes they don't. But the church has a unique measure of compassion and capability and insight and freedom to really help people. And a lot of that takes place in the worship experience, whether it's a Saturday worship or a Sunday worship. When people gather together, they're able to be helped and served and encouraged by those in the church. Sure, you could do that over the phone. And by the way, I'll say this, I have had a lot of ministry over the phone, FaceTime, in a Zoom room, but it simply does not replace the personal face-to-face contact. Even if we're 6 feet back, that's still much better than an electrical wire or some, a phone line zipping up to the satellite and coming back. Isn't that amazing, by the way? But we can do that. And I'll just say this, we are grateful for technology that allows some measure of contact with our people. So we are able to help people that are struggling. And a lot of people are struggling, especially now. This is the time we need to reach out to people. Number 6, the church, by definition, must gather together, or it's not the church. The word for church, ecclesia, long story short, it is a gathering of people for a purpose. The word synagogue in the Jewish tradition means to bring together. Temple, those types of words literally mean there's a place to gather together, to get together. And for the church not to gather together in a physical location, I'm going to suggest it's like a basketball team, an NBA basketball team playing without a ball. It's like a symphony of people. And by the way, similar words that prefix SYM or SYN, bringing together. It's like a symphony without instruments. You can call it a symphony, you can call it a basketball team, but it's just not quite there. Number 7, proximity facilitates care. Again, I touched on this a little bit earlier, that we're able to reach out to disenfranchised, but everybody. People are helped when they come to church, more meaningfully when they're close to each other. Again, email helps, texting helps, those types of things, but being present with people. And I mentioned to you earlier that it's one of the most meaningful things to people. My heart was devastated 2 weeks ago when one of our members passed away for bad health, for ill health. Not because of COVID-19, I want to be clear of that, but they passed away. I was not able to be there. I didn't get to see her in church, which I normally would have the weeks following her passing away. And so she passed away outside of our church community. Broke our hearts. Now, gathering together, would that have made a difference? Yes, it would have. it would have brought more meaning to her, more meaning to us. And we're living with that. We're making that work. We're adjusting. We're compassionate, smart people. But it's just sad to have a lot of, it's sad to have a lot of life and death events take place outside of the community where you're usually able to encourage and support and pray for one another. Number 8, for a lot of people, I touched on this earlier, church is the highlight of the week for people. Their busy lives, their stresses, their problems, their worries, their health concerns, they find church, or at least they should find church. And this is one of our goals at Ferndale Alliance Church. Church to be a safe place. It's a safe harbor for people to land their boats and just be there and say, I can just be myself. This is a place where I am accepted entirely for who I am, though we also are a place where we encourage people, we work with people, and we expect people to be on a journey towards becoming whole in Christ. But people find that for many, this is the highlight of the week because it helps them. Number 9 is accountability. Accountability, and even in the secular world, we now understand the importance of accountability. People that will ask us the hard questions. How are you doing? How are you doing with your marriage? How are you doing those struggles with finances? And this assumes a voluntary covenant of openness and sharing. And people come to church because they are hoping that someone will look them in the eye and say, how are things going? And by the way, I mean it. How are you doing? And how can I be helpful to you? How can I assist you? At the very least, how can I pray for you? So accountability, and more importantly, what accountability brings is empowerment and improvement in people's lives. Finally, the physical gathering of the church brings unity, brings people together. We look at each other on a Sunday morning and say, this is our church. This is our community of faith. And we also celebrate and rejoice that there are communities of faith all throughout the city, the county, the state, around the world. And we mentioned yesterday that some of those communities of faith, it is illegal for them to meet. They don't have this precious, wonderful doctrine called the First Amendment, this document that says we have the right to assemble and to worship and speak our minds. And they meet secretly and hidden in basements and homes and do that because it is so important to them. And just that example by itself, that there are people that want to meet in groups of 5, 10, 15, crowded in a house because it's important to them, should remind us here that we desire the same opportunities and rights here. So to our governor, I'm appealing to you. I'm addressing you about a grievance, and that it has to do with your well-intended document to bring our state back online, opened up again in a safe way, that we need to remove the discriminatory nature of some of those statements that are found in that plan and make it equitable and equal. And in doing that, I'm asking you to consider that church may not feel essential to some people. It is essential to a lot of people. Thank you for watching. Thank you for taking time to think about this. I hope you'll take the time to look at some of the passages I've referenced, and also take a look at the First Amendment. That's a healthy thing to do, as well as take a look at our state's 4-phase plan to reopen up. God bless. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.